This session is about circular bioeconomy and the role of circular economy and circular business models, as well as the specific role of bioeconomy in India. We are going to try to cover areas such as air quality, raise farmers' income, replace fossil coal, biocoal, sub-supplier management, local community engagement. So what are my connection except India here to circular economy? On a really small scale, I remember at this Banjara Basti again, where I was, people were grasping for these opportunities that were in the close area where they lived. They were making pots from paper that they found, like garbage paper, and sold that in a way to reuse garbage and make it into a product to sell. They were collecting glass bottles, plastics, to make a small living out of that as well. So even though it's a tiny scale, it's still an example of the opportunities that you can take from a circular thinking. With that said, I will introduce the next panel. It's a pleasure to welcome you. We have Professor Anders Nordin, founder and head of R&D, Bioendev. We have Östen Ekengren, Executive Vice President, IVL-Swedish Environment Research Institute. We have Dr. Stina Wallström, Director of Regulatory Affairs, IKEA. And we have Dr. Swaminathan, but we can call him Swami. Future Urbanism Program, Uppsala University. And the format of this kind of session will be the same. You will have 5 minutes each to introduce yourselves, and if you have any slides, I'm not sure. Yeah, you have. You can use them when you present yourself. And then we will have roughly 20 minutes to discuss on this, again, big picture industry perspective, as well as the people on the Indian people. Okay, so will you start, Anders?
Yeah, I can start.
Sure.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you all for inviting us here. I'm representing Bioendev, a company, spin-off company from Umeå University, where I have my main position 10 years ago, 12 years ago. It's about producing biocoal, another energy carrier of the future. There are and should and need be many new energy carriers, new energy solutions for the future. And Bioendev is promoting and trying to facilitate the use of biocoal. So I have two hats, university and Bioendev hats. And we have a nice collaboration with Indian partners going on. What we do is we produce biocoal, more or less black pellets. White pellets is used for electricity production, heat production, but eventually could also be used for liquid fuels production. And to facilitate that, we more or less dry the biomass and dry it some more. We roast the biomass to make it brown, like your toast in the morning, or like coffee, instant coffee quality. Thereby, we can more easily replace fossil coal and fossil oil. More or less the same processes, but for biomass. We have the largest plant in Europe. We also have a pilot plant for development use. We're currently dismantling it, teaching our Indian partners to use it, and it will be shipped to India then next month to be further developed for the Indian agricultural residues like straws and so. The reason why we do this is, of course, the climate issue. You all know about the scary report from IPCC a few weeks ago, more or less the last report from the scientists. It's really scary. We are close to tipping points. We need to decrease from the 2.0 degrees goal down to 1.5 degrees goal. So we need to do this, and we need to do it fastly. In India, we have another issue, and China also, and that's the big air quality challenge in the cities. We thought that was the traffic, but the main problem is actually burning these crops in the fields. So we need to find some solution to make these crops a good fuel instead, and we think we have a solution coming up. To transfer the 35 million tons paddy straw, for example, to 25 million tons of fossil fuel replacement then. And that's more or less, that numbers are not the goal of Bioendev, but that's the potential for Bioendev and other competitors, partners within this area, to reduce greenhouse gas emission then by that, and solving also a local regional problem. We need huge amount of coal, huge amount of biocoal, replacement of fossil fuel, but it is one of the most efficient ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And we solve two problems at the same time. So the roadmap ahead is then bringing this technology to India, setting it up there, using Bioendev proprietary technology and know-how, and then adding Greek technology for leaching, washing the straw, basically getting rid of a lot of the ash to increase the potential of presently 2% replacement up to maybe 20, 50% replacement of the coal. And that's the plan.
Thank you very much, Anders. We'll come back to this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So please, Östen, will you
Yes.
continue?
Thank you. First, we are working also in India as IVL and as Smart City Sweden. We have been advisor to government of India for 3 years how to take care of the wastewater and waste in Mumbai and also Delhi. So we are now dealing with them to find better sustainable solutions for the future. We are also deeply engaged in discussion with several cities how to be smarter than today. But what I promised to say something about is the bioeconomy. First, to repeat Sweden, we are a giant in this aspect. 70% of the area is covered by forest. So we have a long tradition to produce pulp, and from that paper, toilet paper, paper to write on, and packaging material. And this will be even more important in the future. We need to produce even more packaged material to replace some of the material produced from fossil. But the other way around, we also need to use the forest much more for building houses and furnitures. And houses has been a problem because of fires. Now this is solved, and from an environmental point of view, we should use forest material to build up more houses. We have now some good examples here in Sweden, and we must even do more. The same with furniture. It's much better to use forest material to produce furniture than fossil material. But the hope and the giant for the future is like this, that a crop just need sunlight, carbon dioxide and water, and then produce the plant fibers. And that is extremely simple, and we must develop it further on. So what's going on in Sweden and in many other countries is to put in a lot of research money to develop the new product for the future, to find better alternative to the fossil one that we have, but also to find better food that is more non-toxic and safe and that will be more long-lasting. And I think in that respect for food, I'm impressed about India. They told me first time that you have to learn a lot. I'm eating a lot of meat myself, and they said, no, we are vegetarian. And that's the way it is. They can show us a good example how we should handle it. But we need better food, and this must also be in the research area. So I think that we have in Sweden a very good position. It must be deepened, but also other countries can, in cooperation with us, develop smarter solutions. That is my key message.
Thank you very much. Stina, please.
Thank you. So I'm here representing IKEA, and IKEA loves India. Our vision is to provide a better everyday life for the many people, and where better to do that than in a land of 1.3 billion people. We just opened our first store in India, but we are no strangers to the land of diversity. Our philanthropic arm of IKEA Foundation, have been working for 15 years, mostly with projects directed to women and children, and very often to mutual benefit of India and IKEA. Right now, we have in a project called Next Generation, over 2,000 women making local and traditional craft that is sold in selected IKEA stores. And it's a beautiful project, and the products are beautiful. But maybe even more important, we have been present in India for 40 years with purchasing and production. And together with our suppliers, many of which we have very, very long-term relationship with, we normally it takes a long time to become an IKEA supplier, but when you are one, we stay with you and you stay with us. That makes it possible for us to together develop very good practices that we can use to achieve our sustainability goals. Because we have a very, very ambitious sustainability goal. By 2030, we should become climate positive and regenerate resources while growing the IKEA business. And how do we achieve that? Well, you have to eat the elephant one chunk at a time. So we have decided, for example, on our expansion in India, to focus on different things on different store. Our current store in Hyderabad, we focus on clean energy. Already now, we are producing 30% of the energy we use by solar panels on our own roof. And we are delivering 20% of the goods with electrical vehicles. Next year, we hope to deliver 40% of the goods with electrical vehicles. And in year 2021, the goal is 60%. So we are growing. We also have other projects like closing the food loop. We have educated 2,500 women farmers close to Hyderabad in organic farming and more sustainable farming. And we are buying their vegetables for our restaurants. And the next step is to invest in a biodigester so we can take the food waste from the restaurants and in a safe way produce compost and return that to the farmers we are cooperating with. Next one will be Mumbai. There we will focus on waste. We will start by, together with the Indian government, we clean up a nearby landfill, close it and clean it up, and then we will follow up with a state-of-the-art waste management in our stores to show our customers how it can be done, basically. And we will also have a lot of awareness-raising campaigns directed to our employees and to our customers. We hope then to expand to Bangalore, where we will have a focus on water, because there is a real water shortage in Bangalore. And we will soon launch an innovative challenge to find local entrepreneurs that can help us to make sure that we save as much water as we can in our stores. And then in Delhi, it will obviously be air, because the air quality in Delhi is a problem. We are working with alternative use of crops for furniture and biocoal, so probably we have something together. And that's the way we will try to do it. And we do know that we have a long way to go, to become climate positive and regenerate resources while growing the IKEA business. But we look forward to the journey, and we will take that journey together with our suppliers and our employees and our customers. And if we take one step every day, we will reach the goal sooner than we think.
My name is Swami, and I lead the Future Urbanisms program in Uppsala University. It's a long-term pluridisciplinary program. The focus is on sustainability and resilience. So that's a critical factor that we believe is necessary if you want to think about sustainability. You also need to think about resilience. We are also extremely focused on what we call as platform thinking and design thinking. It's quite unlike any other research project that the university has incubated till now, in the sense that the entire project is located within social sciences. But we are very, very closely working with different kinds of industry representatives, consultancy organizations, civil society organizations, and very clearly with several disciplines that otherwise would not get involved in urbanization. For instance, quantum physicists or data scientists who are working on small data rather than big data. So in that sense, Future Urbanisms is a long-term multidisciplinary research project. I think a little bit of a context is required in order to understand as to why is Future Urbanism structured the way it is. We don't have the kind of immediate concerns that the three of them brought in here. And that's deliberate, because we believe that you can't change the wheels of the car while you're moving. So it's necessary to create a space where people from different communities, from different companies, from different institutions can put their minds and their hearts and their time together without having the pressures of a bottom line or a quarterly report or revenue implications coming in, so that we are able to think through what is happening with our planet in a much more thoughtful, aware manner. And there are three specific contexts. The first context is the world's largest mass migration that is taking place. It's the largest mass migration in the history of humanity. Ever since we came onto this earth, it's the largest mass migration that is taking place. Many people are aware of it, many are not. But that largest mass migration is happening in India right now. It's from rural areas to urban areas. That's the largest mass migration that is taking place, and is taking place even as we speak. So around 150 million stay in around 50 odd cities in India. By 2030, it's going to rise up to around 300 million. And by 2050 to 800 million. Now, when you're talking about population sizes of the range of 800 million, there's a second context that we need to keep in mind, which is the fact that we have signed up to go ahead and keep the greenhouse gas emissions down to a certain level, so that the temperature rise is not more than 1.5 degrees. We are now saying it's going to be 2 degrees. And even that's going to be very, very tough, which essentially means that if we have to go ahead and stay even within 2 degrees, it means that we have to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 45% by 2030. And by 2050, we have to become carbon neutral. Now, that's a massive ask. So take into account that you're going to have 800 million people living in cities in India, and you're going to get to a place where you're going to be carbon neutral by 2050. It's a massive, massive task. And the third context is something very, very specific. I think Bhagwan brought out briefly in his presentation. Katrina also brought out briefly in her presentation. Is the fact that you've got all the cities in the world occupy around 2% of the land mass. That's just 2% of the land mass. Just for comparison's sake, Russia has 11% of the land mass. So all of the world's cities can be accommodated in 2% of the land mass, and they accommodate around 80% of the world population in terms of, if you just take into account that it's 4 billion people. It's going to increase to 6 billion people by 2030. And they are already emitting 70% of greenhouse gas emissions. So either you can look at it as a challenge, saying that 2% of the land mass consume 80% of the world's resources, emit around 70% of the greenhouse gas emissions, or you can treat it as an opportunity, because you basically have to deal with only 2%, 2 to 3% of the land mass. We at Future Urbanisms treat that as an opportunity, saying that this is a great opportunity for us to go ahead and look at some of these issues. And we believe that if you don't go ahead and bring in different kinds of stakeholders into the ecosystem to think through these things, whether they're quantum physicists, whether they are small data scientists, whether they are social scientists, whether they are anthropologists, ethnographers, whether they're companies, you won't be able to solve it, because eventually it needs to be located with the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, when I read the heading of, or the name of this session, circular bioeconomy, I start off by, okay, circular economy I'm used to, but can you please describe, anyone here, what's the distinction between circular economy and circular bioeconomy or bioeconomy? Okay, Swami.
I'll give it a shot. I don't think there are any accepted definitions as yet, because we're still evolving. But if you want to sort of look at the old model of economic production, which comes from our industrial revolution days, etc., which is from the 17th century, 18th century, it's a very linear kind of a economy, which is use, produce, dispose. So that's precisely where it is. And somewhere or the other, it's the disposal part of it that seems to create a lot of problem, and that's where a lot of focus, very rightfully so, has been. But if you look at a circular economy concept is more in terms of the fact that there's a possibility of a regenerative, restorative economy. The fact that whatever you're inputting into the economy, that comes out as an output, and that can still be reused and recycled and regenerated and put back into the economic system. I think it's a fairly robust idea. I think it's also at a stage where we are able to go ahead and see some prototypes and some models. Now, when you're looking at a bio-circular economy, in some way or the other, we are trying to sort of mix and match, to the best of my understanding, what is happening in nature, because nature is a great teacher. So if you're able to go ahead and see a leaf and see the pattern of a leaf and then use that pattern in order to go ahead and evolve a more efficient solar cell, that's a bio component to a circular economy. So in that sense, how can we learn from the nature? How can we go ahead and turn it into a more thoughtful, aware system wherein everything that we use can also be reused, has the potential to be reused, so that people understand that whether you're using a cup or a coffee or a tea bag, there is a potential for a reuse and becomes part of your second nature.
Thank you. Anyone else who want to add or?
Well, the most important of there are two concepts, and they are merged together. I don't know why, but bioeconomy is, of course, the most important is the circulation of the carbon. So a growing tree captures carbon most efficiently. There are no man-made processes that efficient, that cheap, that self-sustainable. So the growing biomass is capturing the carbon from the atmosphere, and then we use that carbon, and it comes out again, captured by the next generation trees or crops or whatever. So that's the circulation in bioeconomy. And of course, we should use that raw material, the green carbon, for as much materials, fuels, energy as possible. Not only should, we need to, because we don't have much more oil, gas. Those sources are limited. We can produce as much hydrogen as we want by electricity and solar electricity, but the carbon is limited, so we need to recycle the carbon, and that's the bio part of that.
Okay, thank you. Östen?
I think, per definition, this comes up against the linear economy with the fossil dependence that we have built up for years. So bio-based material per nature can always be recycled, and therefore it is the best example of a circular economy, because if you produce a paper will be recycled. At the same time, you grow up new trees that can be used to produce even more in the future. So it helps us that it can be sustainable. Other material you cannot be sustainable. So I think that is the main point. But we are not always there to recycle all the material, but you have the possibilities, as you mentioned here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question now, Stina. In January this year, IKEA won the World Economic Forum Circular Award. Circular Economy Award. And you are transforming your business into a circular business. You've now entered the Indian market, even though you have long relations with suppliers from India. But you entered this year, right? And so please tell the people here, like, what has been the challenges of entering in India, the learnings from this short period in relation to this business model, and also working with, I mean, even though you have established supplier relations, I guess there are still other kind of suppliers in there. Yeah, so please.
Yes, when IKEA is establishing, we create sort of an ecosystem around ourselves. Some of it we are in control over, much more so than most companies, because our business model is different than most other companies. We control the entire supply chain. We don't go to furniture fairs and say, okay, we take 1 million of those and 1 million of those. We have our own design. You only find IKEA products in IKEA stores. And that is global, and that is something that helps us. And in that respect, India is no different than any other market. We sell the same high quality products in the Indian market as we do in the German market or wherever else. Well, there is a slight difference because it's more moist in India, so we have to make it even a little better for India. But sustainability-wise, it's the same. And also, it's the same when we work with our producers and when we source, because we have IWay, which is our standard and code of conduct that everybody must follow regardless of where you are. There is no exception for anybody, and that regulates how we should work with sustainability and how we should work with our human resources and the working conditions. And one part that I need to mention because it's so nice is that we always employ 50% women and men at all positions, and that is also true in India. That was a bit of a challenge because, as you may know, many women are not included in the Indian workforce. So we have started an education program. So far we have educated 250 women in to be employed in our stores, and we have employed 85 of them. Many others has gone to other international companies. What can be a little bit challenging is, I mention standardization all the time, even if I'm not saying it outright. Our entire business idea is to do the same globally. So when it comes to legislation, we don't like the land of diversity, actually. We really want harmonization, preferably global harmonization, because then we can just find the strictest standard and sell it to the entire world, and that is very okay with us. We don't want low standards or low requirements. We just want the same. And that is a bit challenging in India because there are a lot of national legislation and regulation that forces us to adapt our products to specific Indian needs just because it's not compatible with other Indian needs. So the more harmonized, standardized the legislative landscape could be, the better it would be for us. Yeah. But otherwise, it is business as usual, and we find it more fun than challenging to work with India.
Yeah, just a very, very short follow-up question on that, which I found was fascinating. I mean, Swedes are used to, since decades, since IKEA started, to when we buy something, we have to actually put it together ourselves, because that's the business model. But IKEA found out that this is not the case in India. So can you just comment on that? What's that about? And what have you done to...
Before we establish on a new market, we always do hundreds and hundreds of home visits to find out how people live their lives. We don't look at the aesthetics, because we've heard from time and time again, oh, they don't want your furniture, they don't look like the way they want them, but they always buy them. So we just say, okay, design-wise, we're probably on cue in India as well. But when it comes to building things themselves, we realize that will probably not happen in India to the same extent as it will on other markets. So we have started a cooperation with a company called Urban Clap, where we educate carpenters, both women and men, to assemble our furniture. So we sell that service together with the furniture, so to say.
Yeah, yeah.
And how long is that education? How long is that education?
It's 1 week for women and 2 weeks for men. No, honestly.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Stina.
Honestly, I don't know.
A question to you, Anders. Why is India in such a demand of biocoal, and what is it that you offer? I mean, you showed it there, but why is it such a demand?
Yeah, I just heard India passed the US in total global. It's number 2 globally after China in fossil fuel use. And as we heard today already, we need a lot of solutions, a lot of wages, pieces to match together to solve this. We need to replace 50% within 20 years. So it's extremely, we are in an extreme hurry, and we need to make this happen in China and India, first of all, US, of course. Europe, we need, I mentioned that we need biocoal for replacing coal in power stations to produce electricity. But even more challenging and important is probably switching the fossil coal in metallurgical production, petrochemical production, as we see IKEA and other companies. A lot of companies now demand or think they will demand next 10 years, 5 years, green metals, green petrochemicals, everything should be green. And the companies that are producing those now, in the boards, they are not thinking tomorrow, they are thinking 10 years ahead, 20 years ahead. So if they can't produce green products, they are out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we need it for all industry.
Yeah.
Biocoal.
And you have currently set up your first factory in India with support of the Indian government, right? What are the learnings taken from entering India, and has the ambition and from the Indian government reflected like the cooperation and the ease to enter the market, or to put up the first factory?
It's too early. As I said, it will be shipped in 1 month. Hopefully, we have an application within the Department of Science and Technology, and hopefully that will be approved. We have had extremely nice help with from Sweden, from India, together partners, and the interest from industry is large. The interest from Agriculture Department is also large. So that's all we know right now. The interest is there, and we will hopefully make it happen together with our Indian partners.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And Östen, you said that you've been environmental advisors for the government for 3 years.
Yeah.
Can you briefly tell us about the outcomes from this partnership, and like any specific project that you would like to highlight that has made an impact related to circular bioeconomy?
Yes, first I will also say that I listened to the presentation before about electric buses and cars, and for all of them you need a lot of electricity produced by coal power plant. Remember that in Sweden 32% of the energy comes from biomass. We are using forest residue all over the country when we together with incineration of household waste. We also use it in industries more and more. In Sweden, all the fuels, like 20% is not fossil-based at all. Biodiesel is the number 1. We are producing more and more from the forest. We have biogas and we have bioethanol. And I think for India, a lesson learned, which we try to introduce, is not put 100% in the electric-driven transportation. Also try to use some of the other fuels that can be produced. And if you look at India as a whole, waste to energy, they have some experiences from incineration of household waste. And many of them are quite bad. And that is a different reason. So now, recently we did a pre-feasibility study in Pune for waste to energy plant, which we hope can be much better and show that the waste, household waste in India can also be used as a fuel for incineration, where you can produce electricity, but we all hope also in the long run to use the hot water. If you look at waste, 2/3 of the energy comes as hot water. In Sweden, we started only using this for district heating, now for district cooling. In India, China, where you go, they only produce electricity. They don't care about the hot water. And the hot water, they say, we don't need it, it's so hot here in Mumbai. Okay, I can agree. But you can use a heat exchanger to use it for cooling purpose. And I think that could be a giant step forward. Then you lower the payoff time dramatically. So I think a win-win situation if you start more and more to see that the problem in one sector like waste can be used as a solution in another sector, giving energy, giving better air quality. And your solution coming up here, I think, is also very good because on the farmer land, you have giant problem with the straw and everyone goes out and burn it at sometimes, and then you have the bad air quality. So if you use it and produce a green coal, it's superb. So I think in those areas, I think India should rethink, and they are rethinking. And also when you build, like in Mumbai now, the 7 new wastewater treatment plant, what to do with the sludge? You go to landfill. Why don't do as we have done in Sweden for years, use the sludge to produce biogas and from that electricity or fuel. So there are easy solutions to combine. And I think I'm a bit optimistic because I see things like in India, it happens a lot. And they are also introducing new mindsets.
Thank you, Östen. I would like to finally ask you, Swami, the development of circular bioeconomy and your thoughts from your future urbanism program. What does this mean for the people at the ground level?
I think all the examples that have been cited today, I think they're all fascinating examples, and they also give an insight into what is possible at the ground level. So when you talk about people at the ground level in India, I think Mr. Kohli brought it out during his presentation when he said that in India, speed, scale, and size, they're at some levels connected, but they at some levels have to be disconnected. You can achieve scale in India without necessarily having the size. So the way mobile penetration is taking place in India, where we've got 1.1 billion mobile phones, which is absolutely phenomenal in terms of numbers. That's taken place because irrespective of the kind of infrastructural problems that all three of us can attest to and I can attest to. So in that sense, at the level of people, when you talk about people, all these are great prototypes, but how do you achieve speed, scale, and size? And how do you achieve it with a certain kind of a standardization so that the quality does not impinge is one of the key questions that we are dealing at Future Urbanisms. So one of the long-term questions that we are dealing with is that how do we evolve a transaction system that is slightly different from the current transaction system, which is essentially based on price points, etc. So we are trying to deal with the question of embodied energy within every single product or a service that you use. So a cup of coffee that we are having here at this particular point in time, for all you know, it might have been sourced in Colombia. The beans would have been ground somewhere else. The coffee would have come here. The hot water would have been supplied from a central plant somewhere in. So of course, a cup of coffee could be 20, 25 kroners, but does it really actually reflect the true cost of the embodied energy? So that's the long-term question that we're dealing with Future Urbanisms. And you have to do that if you're going to have around 800 million Indians living in 65% of India living in cities by 2050. And I think it's also a critical question for the world altogether, saying that how do you move to a different value system?
Anyone who wants to add on Swami's comment there? Yeah. Or anyone from the crowd who would like to ask a very short question? Down there. You have to run.
This is for Anders at Bioendev. You mentioned that you're roasting your pellets. but that must consume a huge amount of energy. Isn't there a smarter way to do that, in a way?
We're not roasting the pellets, we're roasting the raw material before, and actually the cost in energy is drying the biomass to a dry raw material. The amount of energy needed from drying to roasting is more or less, it's very little. It's only 1/6 of the energy used. And besides, we're using the gases from the roasting. So the roasting produces gases, and we can use them to produce the energy on site in the same site. So we basically use the energy that we have already.
Okay. How are we on time? It's over. Okay. But thank you very much, everyone here in the panel. A big applause. Okay.